Hi, I'm Lee from Ransom Spares, and in this video I'm going to show you how to replace the carbon brushes on a Henry vacuum cleaner motor. Now, it's not possible to identify which motor you will have fitted from your model number. There have been different variations fitted to Henry vacuum cleaners over time, and the only way to know which one is in your Henry is to take the number from the side of the motor and take a look on our website to select the correct ones that are going to fit it. Fortunately, gaining access to the motor on the Henry is a straightforward job. The first thing we're going to do is remove Henry's head by undoing the clips and taking the head off. Just remove the bottom of Henry to one side. Next, we need to remove 4 screws that are here. One there, one there, one there, and the final one here. Okay, once the screws are loosened off, we can then take this and separate it away from the cable winder and contacts. And just move that to one side. Now we've done that, there is 3 screws that need removing. With 3 screws removed, we can now prise away this motor cover here. Once again, we'll just put that to one side. And this will start exposing the motor itself. There is a cover that goes around the edge of the motor, which is basically there to hold this insulation in place. That can be removed. Just take out this insulation. The rubber seating grommet can be removed, and then we have access to the motor. And as you'll see here on the side of the motor is the motor number, and this one is a DL2 1104T. And if we take it out completely, there's a couple of wires that just need removing. In order that we can just take the motor out completely. And there you go. That's the motor removed from the Henry vacuum cleaner. So you can identify the carbon brushes, like I say, either by the motor number, or you can take the carbon brushes off and visually compare them to those that are on the website. So what I'll do now is I will take one of the carbon brushes off. First thing we need to do is just remove the wire spade connector that's attaching it to the carbon brush. Better doing that with a pair of long nose pliers if you've got some. And then just removing the 2 screws that are holding the carbon brush in place. And then they should just lift off like so. Okay, as we can see on this one, the carbon brush is actually hardly had any wear at all. If it had worn and your motor was no longer spinning or turning, then the carbon would be back into the holder like that, and it wouldn't make contact with the armature and therefore wouldn't spin the motor. If we compare that carbon brush with a new replacement, you can see they're exactly the same, other than the fact that the cartridge, or the casing should I say, is red as opposed to brown. Otherwise it's an exact match, but if you compare the carbon brush, they're almost the same length. So all we need to do now is replace the carbon brush back onto the motor and then put Henry back together again. So we just slot the carbon brush back into place, and put the retainer clip over the top and screw that back in. Just make sure you don't cross the threads. Reconnect the wire spade connector. Can be a little bit fiddly, and again sometimes it can be a good idea just to push it on with a long nose pliers, just so you know you've got it fully back in place. The motor's now ready to go back into Henry, and we can then put Henry back together. To do this, you turn the motor upside down and get the motor housing ready. We need to reconnect the two wires that we took off earlier. From there, and one there. And then there's two flanges that just need lining up with two guides in the bottom of the motor housing. Very straightforward, like that. Just make sure that the wires are out of place so that they don't get trapped. With the motor back in the motor housing, we replace the motor insulation. Replace rubber grommet on top, and to hold that in place, the insulation cover goes back on. Now we can replace the motor top cover. Which lines up. You can't get it wrong, just takes a little bit of time, a little bit fiddly sometimes. And then we just need to retighten the three screws on the top first. Now we need to reattach this to the cable winding and contacts, and again you can't go wrong here. The switches, the switch bank here fits into the recess, so it's a matter of just placing it over. Before I do that, one point actually is to make sure that you have the cable runner back in. In place like that, and then the motor housing can go back on to the cable winder and contacts. Again, it slots together nice and easily. All that's left is to tighten up the four remaining screws. Now the motor and the cable housing and contacts are all back together, we can then place Henry's head back onto Henry himself. Pull the clips out, head on top, and close the clips. There you go, how to replace the carbon brushes into a Henry vacuum cleaner motor. You can get all your spares and accessories for your Henry vacuum online at